get this party going. Kill the music. Get that guy off the screen. Here we are. We are live. Talk about stories. What story to tell? Who's telling your story? Should you tell somebody else's story? All those things are super important. And it's come up in so many different ways. And it's definitely definitely exciting. Definitely exciting as we continue on. So one of the folks put up over here a question about being a speaker, professional speaker. I don't know if she was a professional speaker. Let me just say that she was a speaker, and she was. There we go. We're good. Got coffee. Don't have much coffee. Have cold coffee actually. Now you know I like coffee. There's a story. But the question was: as a speaker, as a, getting up in front of an audience, are you better off using your story, or are you better off using somebody else's story? Thoughts? I think it's an easy one, really. Nah, never is an easy story, an easy answer. It's always, it depends. The story you should be telling as a speaker, as a motivational speaker, we'll stay in that category. As a motivational speaker, as a business owner too, when it comes to networking. But that story that you should be able, the story that you should tell should be a story that absolutely, positively, without a doubt, completely connects you, your business, with that story. Completely connects you. Could it be your own story? Sure. I think your own story probably is more powerful, although the concern there is that are you just sharing your story because it's an ego boost to you? Gosh, I want to look at the comments on that one. Sometimes I say, hey, look what I did. You know, I met this person and then I met that person, and then all of a sudden, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's networking, right? But if you're saying that you met this person because you understood, my side of it, you understand what that person is trying to accomplish, and then you introduce them to somebody else, and then you're in that world and people are talking about it and your name gets mentioned every so often inside of it, that's a good thing. So now that's a story that you're telling. I mean, if I gave a presentation on networking, that would be it. I would use my story. Is that an ego? Maybe. Maybe. I tell you, I probably use the word I way too many times. Maybe I'll put that in the Toastmaster filler word thing. Try not to use the word I. Use the word we. But if I am the one at a networking event and I am the one telling the story, we are not telling the story. I am telling the story. But what about using somebody else's story? Can you do that? Can you do that? If I sit there and I tell a story of success for you, yeah. If I tell a story of success of somebody, then, and I don't relate it to me, then that's not a good thing unless I'm doing the intro for it. Mike Pierce is actually a phenomenal example of this whole thing. So if I tell you the story of Mike Pierce, who is Mike Pierce? Mike is a speaker, professional speaker, and he's got an amazing story to tell. The question is, what does one do with it? So big fan of Ernest Shackleton. Ernest Shackleton was the explorer. The ship got stuck in the ice. He wound up saving his entire crew, which was a phenomenal thing. And this is going back years ago. It wasn't like you get on a phone and call in a helicopter. It was a big deal. Talked about leadership skills and everything like that. Mike loved that story. So he'd always use that story when he was doing his sales presentations and stuff like that. But he wanted to take it to that next level, and he did. But the question now is that he was using that story to talk about leadership skills and stuff like that. Great example, without a doubt. Was he using it to the fullest extent of it? Well, he had somebody that he had spoken to about wanting to become a professional speaker, not a sales, not just work sales within the organization he was with. And I was like, no, you have to physically connect yourself with that story. Now, nobody's suggesting that Mike, go and rent a ship, a wooden ship, and go get stuck in the ice. You don't have to do that. Uh-uh. But he needed to connect himself with that story. So he actually ran a marathon, a two, at the pole in order to connect himself with the cold and the snow and leadership and determination, everything like that. So he walked in the footsteps of Ernest Shackleton. Maybe he ran in the footsteps. Small difference. Now, all of a sudden, the Shackleton story became his story. He then was a part of the whole thing. But not only that, it added to the whole story. It added to this whole aspect of leadership skills, self-determination, everything else. He spoke about what Shackleton did, but then he did it differently, of course, but he did it. And the most crazy part of it, the guy lives in California. It does not snow in the city he lives in. He doesn't have the mountains in the city he lives in. So we had to go find a place to go train for a marathon in cold weather, really cold weather, not, 60-degree. Oh my gosh, it's cold in California weather. So that in and of itself was a story. Do I tell that story? Yeah, sometimes I do, because I just love the fact that, he did it. And then the question is, how determined are you in order to do what he did? If I'm using somebody else's story, but that's not as powerful if I'm sitting there as that motivational speaker and I'm talking about things that I have done that you could do. And that becomes a bit of who are we speaking to? Who's the audience and things like that. Do I expect any of you to go run an ultra marathon up at the pole? No, maybe a couple of you probably could do that. Marathon? Yeah. I've got my own stories that I've done with that one, and the tie-in on that whole thing was that sometimes we have to go to extremes in order to do something extreme, but we need to be consistent. And that was my story with running a New York Marathon. Is the fact that running a marathon was one thing, training for it was something else. And his story of training was something else. I got the tie-in on the whole thing. So what's the most important thing when it comes to stories? It has to connect to you, directly, absolutely, positively, directly. And that's that story. My issue with storytelling and everything like that that's going on over here from the branding aspect of it, is the fact that I'm actually, getting involved with the long LEDs, the drag strip and the racetrack and the street and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm not a car guy. Am I telling my story? Am I telling their story? I'm telling their story, but trying to and made it into my story, my piece of that whole thing with regards to the workforce development side of it and everything like that. So that was the tie-in on it. Otherwise, it's like, why am I talking about? What's the purpose? And I can tell you, even from a time standpoint, you know, devoted a lot of time to this, but even from a time standpoint, is why am I doing what I'm doing? For me personally, forget about you, forget about this. And don't we all need to ask ourselves that question? Well, I guess this could be another story, couldn't it? Right? When you get involved in something that's not your ballywick, not your house, not your naturally doing, why are you doing it? Why are you doing it? Well, you got to come up with a real answer on that one. You got to connect yourself with that story just as well. So I did. Look, I mean, the initial connection with that one was, it's a microphone. Good. I like doing different things with the microphone. And I know that every time I do something different, it exposes me to different people, different experiences, and it helps build my confidence. So, question on your side, if we were really talking about that, is the fact that what are you doing that's a little different that you could build from? Build up that confidence level, build up the different experience level. Keep doing that. That was where I got started with this whole thing. I was like, sure, I'll announce. I don't know anything about cars, don't know anything about drag racing. I said, oh, it's fine. All you do is read the time slip. And I'm like, great. What's a time slip? I don't know. I don't know. Who knew? I didn't know. Well, they knew. That's who knew, but it wasn't me. But tying that story in, that really becomes important. So here's the other side of the big benefit with that one is that if you're really, truly tying your story into what it is that you're doing, and you want other people to share that story, obviously not going to share the whole story, but they need to see, I mean, really see that you're fully engaged in the whole thing. And that has been the wildest thing that's been happening to me. Maybe it's because it seems like it's the only thing I talk about, which is which is possible. But if you are truly engaged in what you're doing, people will see it. And I've said that time and time again, and I will say it again. People will see it. Not only will they hear it, but they will see it. They will actually see it. When you speak and you are talking, you need to talk in visual form. You need to give them something to see in their mind. Let me go back to what I just said, right? I was asked to go out and speak at the racetrack, to do the announcing at the racetrack. All right, what did you just visualize? Well, you can't tell me, can you? It's a one-way conversation here. But you probably saw a microphone. Maybe you saw a desk. Maybe you saw an office. Never tell you, I did have a microphone, did not have a desk, did not have an office, but it doesn't matter. You saw it. I don't know anything about car racing. Well, visualize that. You can't. What are you looking at? Someone with a dumbfounded look on their face? That's not exactly the image you want. I want you to burn into your head. It's like, hey, there's Brian. He looks confused. Well, I was, but that's not the visual, right? Announcing at a racetrack with a microphone. Use the word microphone, not just announcing. It becomes visual. You see it. All right. So I don't know anything about auto racing. I don't know anything about cars. Maybe you saw the auto racing in the cars, stuff like that. But there was no connection between me and that. You did see me probably with that microphone. I don't know anything about time slips. All right. Now, that's close. If I said I don't know how to read a time slip, I know anything about reading a time slip, a bit more visual. It's actually a better way of phrasing it the way I have been saying it. Glad we're doing this. I don't know anything about reading a time slip. Like even I just naturally put my hand up over here, reading, looking, right? You know, reading a time slip. You now have a visual of what a time slip is. And reading, you could see me looking at it and the rest of that stuff. And this is so important because if you see that, you may forget everything that I would say, but you would see it. And then when something else happens someplace, right, you're going to maybe see, I don't know, an event and someone says, oh man, I wish we had somebody that could MC this thing. It's like, all right, well, it'll Brian microphone. That might be the visual over there. You know, somebody holding up a piece of paper and looking at it confused. Well, you might see me there too. You know, you just might see me there, which is fine. It's a connection with the whole thing, right? Connection with the whole thing. You can't go in too many things, and this is where it gets to be a little, you got to be careful, you know, of that. You got to brand yourself with something someplace. You know, I don't want to brand myself with racing a car. I don't race a car. You know, I do my speed limit, you know, going out there, all well and good. I have not driven a car down that racetrack, not once. No, not at all. I've been a passenger, but not a driver. Don't affiliate me with racing a car. Affiliate me with the rest of that stuff as that goes. So now here's the flip side of it. And this is where you got to really consider what your story is. Are you telling your story? Are you telling somebody else's story? If you're constantly telling somebody else's story, you know, you go out there and tell my story, not yours. They see me, they don't see you. You can't do that. You can't do that. If Mike went out there and said all those stories about Rory Shackleton and the leadership and, you know, had the guys playing soccer on the ice, go figure, go see that one, right? Kept them all in a good mood and did all the rest of the stuff, kept their minds on something different. You know, it wasn't just about surviving. Did you think of Mike once? And I got to go thank him for letting me tell this stuff. But did you think of him once? No, you thought of Shackleton. If he says that, if Mike is saying it, oh yeah, you know, the Shackleton story, really important, leadership skills, you know, had you guys playing soccer, on the ice, and I really wanted to connect and tie it in with himself, and I really wanted to connect with that story, so I ran an ultra marathon on the ice at the pole. Now all of a sudden you're like, what is that? That becomes the visual. And I was wearing an orange Parker throughout the whole thing, or I actually ran in sneakers. I don't know what he ran in. That's a good question. I don't know what they were actually running. I don't think they were in boots. Maybe some cold weather sneaker. Who knows? I don't know. But maybe we'll go get a list of what does one need in the way of clothing to go run a marathon up at the pole. Oh, maybe you just need that. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you need your head examined a little bit. But then again, we all do some crazy ass things. But by getting specific with that, I was wearing an orange Parker. I was running in just a t-shirt as I ran through the snow for 26.2 miles. And don't ever discount the 0.2 miles if you speak to someone who's run a marathon. Those are the most exciting 0.2 of a mile that there can be. And I do say that in front of race car fans with that 8th mile thing. But that 0.2 of a mile, that's mine. That's not yours. That's mine. That is the greatest feeling or the most painful feeling in the world. Tie your story in. See it. Make you see it. And I just envisioned what I just saw on my first time I ran the marathon too. That last 0.2 of a mile, what that really was. And I could tell it to you. And maybe we got no way of time. Maybe I will tell it to you, but it was there. So tie your story in. I don't want to keep. I feel like I'm repeating myself here. Tie your story in. What's been going on in this world, and I can tell you exactly how this whole thing kind of comes to be. Is that you've been talking about the idea, the racetrack, fits in with workforce development and the nonprofit side of it. With the schools and speaking at the high schools and things like that. So I got a message from the Patchogue Rotary Club. They were looking for a speaker. I told them. They were like, that'd be a great topic. So we went down there and we shared the idea that Long Island needs a drag strip, does their car shows over at Mount Carmel Church over in Patchogue. And it's a win for everybody. Whereas the Long Island needs a drag strip has a place to do the car show. It's a very big parking lot. They get like something around 1,000 cars every once in a while in there. Big numbers. And then the church benefits also because they ask for a small donation, ask for $1 donation for either a spectator or a car if you're showing the car. So I mean they could collect $1,000, maybe even more if people do it. So it's a win. So that word got around, and I told Rick, and I'd go down there and speak, and then he had asked me about anybody else, that would be an appropriate guest for down there. I was like, absolutely. So who comes to mind? Right? This is the story. Who comes to mind first? Right? And there was 2 groups that came to mind, but I can tell you honestly, I was just looking to see if my wife's listening to this one. I tell you, there was 2 groups that came to mind. One of them was Ollie's Angels. All right. Ollie's Angels, we just rescued a dog. We adopted a pit terrier and nice dog and all the rest of that stuff. Wakes me up every morning to go for a walk every morning. And so we've been doing that. But so that's a rescue nonprofit 501c3 group would be appropriate story over there. And then also Lenore Proprocki's group and Rick Amaretta, Spheres of Influence. It was Spheres of Influence that came up first because of the story that they tell. It's a networking group. Oh, well and good. So many other networking groups that are out there. That wasn't it. It wasn't it. Networking group doing good. Again, there's a lot of groups out there that are doing good. But the reason why they came up is they got a unique story. They have a unique story. Their story is the fact that they are looking to support the other nonprofits that are out there. It has to be a valid 501c3, filled out all the forms and stuff like that. But that could use the help. They could use the marketing help. They could use the visibility help. They could use the funds help because they're a smaller organization. What a great story that is, right? And that was burned in my mind. Is it a great story to rescue dogs? Yeah, we've been doing it for 25 years, I think it is. Maybe even a little bit longer than that. 25 years. Long time. All different kinds of dogs. Greyhounds, now a different kind of breed. That's a great story too. The other one just seemed like it was a perfect fit. And it was on the top of my mind. They have a sphere as their logo. They're helping the community, great people, very enthusiastic. Every time I've gone, I spoke to Lenore a couple of times about it, Rick a couple of times, went to one of their meetings, big smiles all around. Great people all around, every one of them. It was a top of mind story. So when I told Rick over at the Patchogue Rotary, Rick Braille, I was like, I think this is a great group. Two of them would be good. Spheres of Influence, I think, would be better, in that respect because of what it is they do. It's an organization doing good. Patchogue Rotary, it's an organization doing good. Great fit. Great fit. You have to think about what story and what people are visualizing about you, about your effort, about the nonprofit you're behind, about the business that you're behind. Just about you, maybe. Maybe just you. You just want to do things that are different. I got a friend of mine that wants to go hiking all the time and take on adventures all the time. Will every adventure that comes to him be appropriate? No, I believe not. Another very, very good friend of mine does does a radio show. I, I know he does a radio show. Obviously, I know he does a radio show. I know that he's got a high level of expectations from the guests that goes along with it. That's the brand. That's the visualization. And he told me a couple of things that I could see. I want you to have a book. I could see that guest book. Okay, that's if it's nothing else that gets remembered. And obviously, I do. He's a close friend, but it's nothing else that gets remembered. That's it. Jay Oliver's show in the morning, right? On 103.9 LA News Radio. And, he's another one. He's like political. It's just got to be political. I gave him a couple of other ideas, and it's like, just, if it's either big picture, real big picture, or something political, or like flat out brand, right in the news immediately. Very tough for me to make a suggestion to him on something that's in the news immediately because it's too quick. It's too quick. So that doesn't really work. But, in that respect, Scott Possessa, that's another one too, Radio Jawline. So Scott is always looking for guests, but the guest criteria there could be very big picture, could be nice organization and things like that. But it's got to lead to a job. It's got to lead to jobs. It's got to lead to people getting hired someplace. Got to lead to a career, clearly lead to a career, not in the theory of career, but really it's got to lead to something. Maria Fry has been a guest on there many, many times. Why? Because Maria Fry is talking about how to get in front of the people that will hire you, how to effectively do it. What is the roadmap in order to do that? What is that path to getting there? So it's concrete ideas. Got to be concrete. Next Saturday, February 25th, 2 to 3 p.m., you'll hear Suffolk Community College on there, which is great. But Competition Auto Group is going to be there because that is the jobs. So Suffolk Community College, President Ed Bonnier will be representing the school. Dave Malkutz will be representing the automotive program. He's the associate dean there. And then Steve Young from Competition Auto Group will be there representing the Suffolk program and how business get involved with that, but also careers, flat out careers in the dealerships that he represents. Competition Auto Group, along with the whole of the industry. Great stuff, but that's it. I mean, that's Scott's brand. Everybody's got a brand. You have to have a brand. It becomes super important to you. It becomes super important to your growth because you cannot be everywhere. And another topic that came up today. You can't be all over the place. You can't be. You just can't be. You can't be at every event all over the place. Even with the person I spoke to earlier today, we were talking about that. It's like, going to things. You're like, do you go to everything? The answer is no. You can't go to everything. You shouldn't go to everything. You should go to the things that make the most amount of make the most amount of sense, and speak to the people that make the most amount of sense for you. Spend time with those people. Sometimes we don't know, and you got to have the conversation. That's the elevator pitch stuff. Is it something I can help you with? Is it something that somebody else could use your services, or just somebody that it's just too far away from what it is that you're actually doing? You got to give them that story, right? They have to give you that story, and it gets repeated, and it's a great thing. Last example of this one, and we'll call it a day. Impromptu. It wasn't even a meeting. Ran across this person speaking to a woman about, the idea, promoting the workforce with the possibility, the racetrack and the drag racing that's taking place, stuff like that. Told them I got Suffolk Community College is going on the, Scott show and stuff like that. She's like, oh, my grandson works at one of the radio stations. He might have an interest in that. Well, she repeated the story, and lo and behold, I don't know how much of it she got right or didn't get right, but she got enough of it right. Got a phone call, so I will be doing another program. May 7th, this one will air. I haven't done it yet, but May 7th it'll air, and we're going to talk about the idea of workforce development and how that goes and how to make that happen. So I'm super excited about it. Look, there's so many things that are going on. It's great. Make sure that people visually see what it is that you're talking about. I have to pick up the phone right here. We're going to cut it out 2 minutes early. Have yourself an absolutely incredible day.